Hello, good time zone, everybody. My name's Marcus, pronouns are he, him, and I'm also known as the Chindividual. And if you're here, then you're probably here for the same reason that I am here, because it is Myth Speaker time. We're going to take a look at the relatively fresh player's guide for this upcoming adventure path for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. We're going to see how far we're going to get through this little document of approximately 15 pages today, but I'm excited. It's pretty cool to see this mythic campaign, this mythic adventure path that's about to be released. And I'm wondering what the player's guide will tell us. We know it takes place in Iblados, the ancient Greek-inspired part of Golarion, and also part of the world that, if I'm not entirely mistaken, doesn't have a lot of information yet fleshed out for it. So I'm curious to see what the player guide will already tell us, and if there's any cool surprises in here. So if that's what you also enjoy, grab a drink, grab some snacks, and maybe just download the player's guide yourself. It's free to download. You can just get it from the Paizo web store and read along. That would be nice. And if you're hanging out here live, watching this while it is actually happening, drop by in the chat, ask questions, share your opinions. As long as you keep it polite, please. We're here to have a good time. Well then, without further ado, let's have a look at the Myth Speaker Player's Guide. We already have on the cover some art of the exemplar iconic Nahoa is the name, I think. Riding a chariot. Some cool art. We get to the index with funny looking goat. This goat knows what's up. I want this goat as a companion for a character. And we get some more art of our exemplar iconic. Crashed his boat, is on a shore with seagulls and octopus. Not having a good time, but he keeps smiling through it. He's a trooper. Now let's get started here. Welcome to Iblados. I think it's pronounced that way. The Isles of Iblados lie off Casmarin's southern coast, halfway between Kadira and Vudra, and perfectly positioned along the lucrative Obari crossing shipping route. Yet, for all of its prosperity, Iblados' greatest treasure is its mythic power. Since its rise after Earthfall millennia ago, Iblados has elevated its greatest warriors, poets, and mystics to divine status, eschewing traditional deities in favor of these homegrown hero gods. In theory, anyone can become a hero god. Cyclopses living among the island city-states keep watch for worthy candidates, whom they summon for a divinatory rite known as myth-speaking. The giant's foresight identifies what mighty deed, if any, the candidate might perform to awaken their divinity, and if the candidate prevails, they obtain mythic power and join the Ibladan pantheon. However, these hero gods remain mortal, albeit long-lived. Hundreds of hero gods have come and gone, always replaced by a steady stream of new demigods. Okay, so that's of course our entire hook for explaining how the characters here will get their mythic power. I'm assuming that there will be some kind of myth speaking being done. That was, oh, here we go. That was until the Age of Lost Omens began more than a century ago. Prophecy's disruption also harmed myth speaking. Cyclopean divinations became unreliable, and the cycle of hero gods derailed entirely. At the same time, many extant hero gods perished in an ill-fated battle against a whale-like behemoth Uzmariko, who devastated the Iblados' western isles. Iblados still thrives on Obari crossing profits, but with its few remaining hero gods slowly dying off, the archipelago's very identity is beginning to fade. Well, yet another part of the world that is struggling in the Age of Lost Omens, and it's fitting that something like myth speaking, like these prophetic elements, that those don't work if any kind of prophecy no longer works. It's inspired by Iblados, inspired by mythology, draws inspiration from classical Greek and Roman mythology and culture. Both Iblados and the Mythspeaker Adventure Path explore, adapt, and sometimes subvert these inspirations, both creating a region unique to the Lost Omen setting while also enabling you to create stories and characters that would not feel out of place in the Odyssey, Metamorphoses, or the Aeneid. If there's any Greek majors watching this, I'm so sorry for slaughtering the pronunciation of the Aeneid. If you're already versed in this mythology, great. If not, don't worry. This guide explores a few of the tropes and characters that set the tone. What's more, Iblados lies along a major trade route, giving far-flung PCs plenty of reason to show up and get involved, even if this is their first time hearing of Iblados. At the same time, know that Iblados adheres to Paizo standards for tasteful storytelling. Greek myth often features sexual coercion and misogynistic elements, especially when gods pursue unrequited romantic trysts with mortals. These elements don't play a role in the story. This is a really good one. I think this is an important one to highlight because if we're taking Greek inspiration, there are indeed a few elements there that if you want them in your game, you should definitely include this in a session 0 and discuss this with lines and veils and other safety tools. But I'm glad to see that already here in the player's guide, they make it clear that those elements, that's not the ones we're drawing from for this campaign. Cool. It's a mythic campaign. The Mythspeaker Adventure Path takes the PCs from levels 1 through 9, ending at 10th level. Early in the campaign, but not immediately, your characters will gain mythic power as presented in War of Immortals. These rules grant the PCs additional resilience and a handful of additional feats, similar in many ways to gaining a free archetype. The following is a brief primer on mythic gameplay. So a mythic character starts each game session with 3 mythic points, which can be expended to use various mythic powers. Doing extraordinary deeds and overcoming mythic challenges can restore 1 or more points, so you'll have numerous opportunities to feel mythic during each game session. Many mythic abilities let a PC attempt to check with mythic proficiency, which is a level of proficiency beyond legendary. This lets the PCs perform tasks requiring even legendary proficiency, and their proficiency modifier is plus 10. A PC's calling is their first step towards mythic power, similar to how a background is a character's first step towards the adventuring life. A calling provides a PC's first way to spend mythic points, as well as a unique way to regain mythic points once per day. For example, the Demagogue's calling lets a PC spend a mythic point to coerce or make an impression using mythic proficiency, and critically succeeding at a check to coerce, make an impression, or create a distraction can restore an expended mythic point. You also get mythic feats at every even level. A mythic PC gains a mythic feat, chosen from a list available to all of the PCs. Mythic feats typically introduce new ways to spend mythic points to perform exceptional deeds. And at 12th level, a PC chooses a mythic destiny, which is like a high-level archetype that shapes the PC's personal transformation, or apotheosis, becoming anything from a celestial to a demigod to an immortal ruler of a legend. Because the Mythspeaker Adventure Path concludes at 10th level, mythic destinies don't factor into the campaign. However, the adventure does present various ways to continue the campaign, presenting opportunities to attain higher levels and mythic destiny abilities. I like this. So I've heard mixed stories so far about mythic rules in Pathfinder. I've heard people who have been playing around with them, who've been having a good time, who think that they're a really cool addition. I've also heard people that they expected a bit more from it. And I haven't used them in-game yet. And one of the reasons I'm interested in Mythspeaker is because it offers a chance to use these. From having read the mythic rules, one thing that I'm mostly interested in is the mythic destinies, because I think they have some cool concepts to give you as a GM and as player an idea of what direction do you want your character to take in the higher levels. But this adventure doesn't go that far. So that's already something that's I have to look for in another campaign. But the mythic points is something I'm excited to see in action. I'm always up for rules that make characters more competent, more powerful, and more over the top. I've spent quite a time back in late high school, early college years playing a lot of Exalted, which is a game by back then White Wolf, and I think these days it's Onyx Path that does the game. And that Exalted is all about over the top heroic characters that do all of these legendary things. And the idea that I can have at least a bit of that in my Pathfinder game, that sounds really exciting. So I'm glad to see these rules, and I'm willing to give them a try. Really willing to give them a spin. Iblados isn't a single nation. Instead, 9 large city-states control the largest island and claim nearby isles in their sphere of influence. These overshadow a handful of minor city-states and independent settlements. In general, the city-states coexist in peace, punctuated by short wars over borders, trade, and honor. This has chiseled age-old grudges into the political landscape, fueling good-natured trash-talking whose edge is blunted by inhabitants' shared identity as Ibladons. In Mythspeaker, the PCs begin in Paul Balex, one of the easternmost city-states. In addition to the information below, you'll find sidebars throughout this document that introduce the 9 major city-states. Yeah, this is, of course, fully taken from how ancient Greece was. Ancient Greece was not a united nation. You have to think of it as these independent city-states. Things like Athens, Sparta, Corinth. They each had their own spheres of influence. They did their own thing, and occasionally also warred with each other. So this is definitely all in line with the ancient Greek vibes. Though you're free to make any kind of character you like for the Mythspeaker adventure path, taking the following suggestions into consideration will help you get the most out of this campaign. Now we come to my favorite part of every player's guide, and it's the suggested character options. Let's see what we got. Okay, strongly recommend we have human, centaur, and minotaur. Totally get that. Though, centaur and minotaur, large ancestries, Paizo, are you sure your maps are big enough for them? Classes are Bard, Exemplar, Fighter, Oracle, Rogue, and Witch. Really cool to have the Oracle included in here. If we're thinking ancient Greece, we're thinking also like the Oracle of Delphi. I do think mechanically and flavor-wise, Oracles and Pathfinder are different, but if we want to play with themes of the divine, of having some kind of divine burden, a divine curse, then the Oracle is perfect. I'm already thinking of ideas of how to make an Oracle character for this kind of game. I do play an Oracle right now in a very different game, and I just really enjoy the class. Glad to see them as strongly recommended. Sounds totally fitting. Languages, Common and Ibladosi, and skills, Athletics, Diplomacy, Nature, Religion. Okay. For recommended, we have the Athamaru, which I actually have to briefly look up. I think the Athamaru, they are the fish people from Howl of the Wild, are they not? Let me double check. Fish-like humanoids, indeed. Yeah. Are they, what's their size? They're medium, okay. Athamaru are fish-like humanoids who form tight-knit communities underseas with villages of siblings led by a common matriarch. All right, cool. That's really cool. Dwarf, elf, gnome, halfling, leshy, and strix. Strix are these winged humanoids. And then in the recommended classes, we have animist, makes sense, champion. Oh yeah. Oh, I think like doing like a champion of one of the Iblydian deities that they have, one of these former hero gods that ascended. That would be cool. Druid, ranger, sorcerer, swashbuckler, thaumaturge. Thaumaturge is recommended. Interesting. I would have to think for a while to see how I would fit a thaumaturge into the flavor of it, but having like someone with like this esoteric occult knowledge could really work. Languages, Cyclops, Draconic, Fae, Susurran, Thalassic. I think Thalassic is the language of water elementals. Thalassic. The below entries contain speakers of, yeah, it's like water-related species, and Susurran is that's the language of air elementals, if I'm not mistaken. Something like that. And then for skills, acrobatics, crafting, deception, intimidation, occultism, performance, society, survival. Okay, cool. And appropriate, we have awakened animals. Here's the thing. I think you can play an awakened animal in anything. I am a big fan of the addition of awakened animals in Howl of the Wild. I just like the idea of taking any animal, giving it sentience, and making a player character out of it. If you ever end up playing at one of my tables, you play an awakened animal, and I will be happy. Super cool. Orc, ratfolk, and other living ancestries. All other classes as appropriate. Languages: Jotun, Necrol, Petron, Pyrrhic, Requiem, and Sphinx. Oh, Sphinx. Of course. If we don't encounter a single Sphinx in this adventure path, I would be surprised. And Arcana, Medicine, Stealth, Thievery as appropriate skills. Not recommended any undead ancestries. Yeah, well, I guess they just have to stay in the Bloodlords adventure path. I don't want to go through all of these here because there's quite a bit of information, but I am intrigued in the Centaur and Minotaur stuff that we have here. So let's take a look at that. So centaurs are widespread across central Casmaron, including Iblados, which many consider the birthplace of the first centaur. Ibladan centaurs often form semi-nomadic bands that roam a larger island and manage semi-feral fields and orchards. When one crop is in season, the band relocates to harvest the produce, sow seeds, weed the plots, and hunt local game. They then depart to let the field fend for itself, only occasionally checking back to chase off intruders or pull weeds. Centaurs often build communal dwellings along the outskirts of major cities, providing centaurs from any group a suitable place to reside. Only a few settle in cities for long, though, and centaurs have a reputation for flightiness, raucous parties, and stubbornness. I like that. I like this idea of them like cycling between different locations depending on the produce and whatever they grow there. That could allow for a character who really has a good sense of different locations, who might have a bit of a farming background. Maybe like a cleric related to some farming and rural deities. I like that. Minotaurs, like we can't go to ancient Greece without minotaurs. According to legend, the first minotaur was a human architect in service to a petty hero god. The demigod unfairly condemned the architect's work and transformed it into a bull-headed beast who withdrew to the mainland. His distant descendants still favor mainland, having created elaborate settlements whose few buildings on the surface hide underground caverns and communities. Those minotaurs and Iblados often reside in the mountains, creating similarly cunning homes that blend into the landscape. The occasional minotaur is a common sight in Ibladan cities, but large groups attract wary glances. Such gatherings suggest imminent raids or other mischief. All right. Okay, but here's the thing. I think thematically they really fit, but one, in my opinion, pretty valid point of criticism towards large PCs in published material is that often the maps in these published materials are rather small. There's often 5-foot wide hallways and rooms that are 3x3 squares. So large ancestries have a bit of they can't really use their size in many situations. So I wonder if these are actively, strongly recommended in this player's guide, if this adventure path will also accommodate for them. Oh, I flipped to the next page and there was a sidebar, core large PCs. It's as if John Paizo can read my minds. Many Athomarus, centaurs, and minotaurs are large, which can complicate maneuvering in tight spaces like dungeons. The Mythspeaker adventure path involves many open, natural environments that won't impede large PCs. Further, some challenges that are intended for small and medium PCs include accommodations for large PCs, ensuring nobody misses out on the fun. That said, there are occasional dwellings, dungeons, or challenges where a large PC would be inconvenienced. These aren't so numerous that you should feel discouraged from playing a hulking minotaur, unless most of the party is large, which could become unwieldy. Just be prepared to exercise some tactical finesse. Mwah! Perfect. If this is true, I would be really excited to have large PCs in my Mythspeaker game. I don't think having large PCs means that they have to be accommodated in every moment. Being large has advantages and also has disadvantages, which I think is fine. I just think that in many of the adventure paths and adventures that have been published so far, having a large PC was already detrimental by virtue of many of these spaces being very narrow. So if this adventure path is going to give us some spaces where my big-ass Minotaur can really leverage their size, I'm game. I'm all good for that. We also have some bits on the Athamaru, on the Merfolk. I'm curious about that. The Ibledan Islands rise from a shallow continental shelf rich in coral, fish, and shipwrecks. Merfolk have lived here as long as humans, and they frequently trade at dockside markets. Pauliacora is especially accommodating to merfolk, thanks in part to the massive tides that flood part of the city of Eleosas for part of the day. Athamarus are less numerous and have smaller communities scattered among the reefs, yet they're still common visitors to Ibledan ports. Both ancestries collaborate against underwater threats. Anything from Sedekthi raids to tracking where the behemoth Uzmariku is traveling. Okay, this is cool. I think if I were to play an Athamaru or Merfolk, this is a great thing that you have a hook into what I feel will be a major villain in this campaign. Osmariku has ruined some of these islands, and we're gonna play characters that become hero gods with mythic powers. There's no way we're not gonna have a showdown with Osmariku. The Mythspeaker adventure path includes various maritime segments that involve the PCs traveling and sometimes fighting aboard a ship and even diving beneath the waves, giving an amphibious PC opportunities to shine. Cool. That said, most of the adventure involves solid land, so a PC should have some means of traveling alongside the rest of the party. Consider a wheelchair or traveler's wheelchair, and Merfolk PCs might consider the Ancestry Feat's strong tail. Additional mobility device options appear in Guns and Gears and Lost Omen's Grand Bazaar. This campaign never ventures far from the water, so ancestries that require regular hydration won't struggle except under extraordinary circumstances. Cool. Once again, this is already one of the concerns I would have if I were to play one of these aquatic ancestries. How big at a disadvantage would I be? We have Awakened Kin, other monsters, quotation mark, monsters. Ibledos is a nexus and potential origin for minotaurs, centaurs, and many other creatures often considered monsters. Without a doubt, many monsters are dangerous and appear throughout this campaign as combat threats. That said, many others dwell openly and in relative peace, such as in the city-state of Paul'Duraxilis, or along the archipelago's smaller islands. Pathfinder provides limited options to play such monsters as PCs. That said, your GM might allow you to adapt and reflavor an existing ancestry, treating the result as a rare ancestry. The Strix ancestry is an excellent fit for a hard PPC. The Jotunborn ancestry from the upcoming Battle Cry, oh wait, it's an exclamation mark, there's an exclamation mark, from the upcoming Battle Cry, might work well for a Cyclops PC. The Awakened Animal ancestry can likewise simulate mythical beasts like a basilisk, young chimera, or sphinx. Applying a versatile heritage like Dragonblood can open up some of the supernatural abilities you want to replicate. That said, these are possibilities and the GM has the final say in what ancestries to allow in the campaign. Collaborate to create something everyone can enjoy. I like this. I hope that in this guide we have something, what was it called again, the place? Paul'Duraxilis. city-state of these monstrous ancestries, that gives me big Eberron vibes. I love Eberron, and in Eberron you have the nation of Droam, which is basically take all of D&D's popular monsters and have them live in a nation and run that nation. It's super fascinating, it's really cool, and I think having characters in a campaign like this who have some monstrous heritage could be a really cool way of tying them into the local folklore, the local stories, and hook them also into these creatures. I would love if there would be a player at my table who thinks like, I want to have some kind of descendancy of a sphinx. How can we do that? And I'm already start thinking, can we do that with some kind of Nephilim heritage? Is there any kind of versatile heritage that we can use there? Sounds like a really cool creative exercise. So I would be very much intrigued about that. We have something, about the Nephilim. There's a bit here. And Vudran ancestries, because Vudran is pretty clear. Vudra is pretty close by. A lot of Vudrani travelers use the Obari Crossing, with many disembarking to seek their fortunes in Iblados. The various city-states compete for talent, giving mercenaries, merchants, and magical specialists no shortage of opportunities. Vishkanyas and Venaras are especially numerous in Polhoimpeia, which is the first major stop for westbound ships. I love Venaras. The rogue in my Abomination Falls game is Venara, a really cool ancestry. And it feels like with Vudra, there's like a bit of a more, you can also bring in then ancestries that are inspired by other Earth folklore and legends. Have a bit of an overlap and bring those myth and legend together. Sounds awesome. I'm always like, this is one of the things I like about these player guides. As I read them, I start thinking of like, oh, if I were a player, what would I play in this? But also, since I'm most often the GM, which I really love, I also start thinking about like, oh, what kind of cool party setups could I have in this? What would be super fun to have in here? Classes. All classes can thrive in the Mythspeaker adventure path. That said, some are especially suited to Iblados, whether they embody local tradition, are rooted in nearby lands, or have excellent skills to overcome the campaign's challenges. Below are several character tropes that embrace both Ibladan gameplay and inspiration from classic mythology, each of which can be found in some of the character classes you might enjoy. Ooh, this is an interesting approach. Basically looking at like certain archetypes. Ibladans are accomplished warriors, and many legends honor combatants who are 90% praiseworthy, only to be tripped up by their flawed 10%. What might your flaw be? Rage? Hubris? Loyalty to a fault? A favorite style you can't abandon? Classes like the Fighter, Barbarian, Champion, and Swashbuckler are excellent fits, and the Warrior of Legend class archetype is the very embodiment of the Achilles heel. Inspired by Achilles, Atalanta, Bellerophon, Heracles, and Perseus. Oh, this is a cool way to do it. This is really cool to get also players into the mind space of this campaign. Like, think in the archetypes of the real world myth and legends that we're emulating here. The Imbued. Whether you're the descendant of other hero gods, warped by mythic magic, or have bargained with powerful beings, you wield supernatural abilities that amaze onlookers. Sorcerers, oracles, and exemplars in particular are excellent choices, as their icon, mystery, and bloodline features can tell entire stories in their own right. Also consider witches, bards, and druids. Animists make an interesting choice because Iblados is so replete with minor spirits, unguided upwellings of mythic energy, enchanted glades, and rambunctious fae, all of whom might be sources of interesting apparitions. Mythological inspirations, a wide range of demigods apply, including Circe, Orpheus, and Proteus. Oh, this is so cool. I really like this kind of approach to it. The Trickster. Myth often include clever twists, and the trickster hero is often the source. Yeah, got low-keyed, everybody. These characters are masters of wordplay, agile combatants, puzzle solvers, and keen minds ready to overcome impossible challenges with a cunning plan. Rogues and bards are natural fit, especially with the mastermind or scoundrel racket, and the enigma or virtuoso muse. Rangers, with the outwit edge, and swashbucklers, especially with the braggart or wit styles, are similarly resourceful but more durable. You might also enjoy the exemplar, as several of their icons and epithet, not a native speaker, are excellent fits for trickster. Mythological inspirations: Heracles, Odysseus, and Theseus. Ooh. This is I really like this approach here of basically taking some of the archetypes. I think 3 of them is already good to help people get thinking. Might be fun to come up with a few additional ones. I couldn't do that on the spot, but there's other archetypes that we can find in Myth. But this is a good start. I think this would really help to help the brainstorm of what kind of characters you want to play as you're brewing up your party. And it's a really good way to come into the mind space. Kudos, Paizo. This is cool. Oh, yeah, I'm just spotting. We were just talking about Paul Duraxilis, this city-state of monsters, and it's in a sidebar here. I want to quickly read about this because I want to check if it has the Eberron vibes I like. Thanks to the heroics of the harpy Ekriathi ages ago, Paul Duraxilis welcomed monsters to live in the city as full citizens. The urban monsters coexist alongside a human minority, mostly remaining on their best behavior. The city-state is ruled by competing bosses, guilds, and gangs that maintain a delicate oligarchy, just like real life. Ekriathi is occasionally reborn into a new body as a young hero god, often leading the monsters to raid nearby city-states for years before restoring peace for another few centuries. Hang on, hold the door. Ekriathi is reborn into a new body as a young hero god. This is like this is a really cool idea for a character you could play in here. Like, what if it turns out that one of the player characters is actually the reborn Ekriathi, and that the myth that is spoken for her, that destiny ahead of her, is like, hey, you're gonna give peace to the city-states. You're gonna help Paul Duraxilis, and maybe that character's like, I don't even know that place. They're not even from Paul Duraxilis, but now they have this destiny being spoken for them. I think that would be really cool. Or maybe have it actually be a local from Paul Duraxilis, who turns out to have become the reincarnation of Ekriathi. But now they have to convince all of the competing bosses, guilds, and gangs of the opposite. This is a really cool plot hook. I would love to have that at my table. Shout out over to Daniel Hassett. He said in chat, player guides are great. So much hidden foreshadowing in them without the players knowing. That's actually also a cool point. I think there is quite some foreshadowing in them. And in other player guides, I have seen that now that I read them back, I'm like, hey, that's a nice little point to what happens later in the adventure. So I'm curious to see how much of it in here is also a bit of foreshadowing. We have a bit on the languages. We already saw that in the table as well. There's a bit of a explanation of which languages are spoken where. So we got the main language of Iblados is Ibladan, which is Ashmayar roots, shared by some other languages like Kelesh. Taldane, referred to as Common, is also a widely spoken trade tongue along the Obari crossing. Okay. As a maritime power, Iblados interacts frequently with merfolk and other aquatic creatures, making Thalassic and Fey useful language. Thalassic is this language for all these water-related creatures. The monsoon winds also attract elemental creatures and beasts who speak Susurran, this wind elemental language. Finally, Draconic is fairly widespread among the various monsters inhabiting the Isles. Iblados is a chain of islands. What if your character is this druid who is hired onto ships to use their druidic magic and their maybe understanding of like wind elementals, they're speaking of Susurran and the likes, to always make sure there's wind in the sails? and you might end up becoming like the party's ship captain, like just hoping that if this is an island-based adventure, that characters might end up having their own ship. I think that would be cool to be like the druid who uses their magic to keep the wind in the sails. Ages ago, the Cyclops language was common in Iblados. However, the giant's waning influence has diminished the language's prominence, and now it's mostly used in legal documents, religious rites, and translations of historical manuscripts. Elemental languages like Petran and Pyrrhic are sometimes heard, with Pyrrhic being more useful in Paul Balax thanks to the city-state's close ties to the Phoenix patron. The Ibladan afterlife is sometimes associated with spirits and psychopomps that speak Requiem, a language that mystics and exorcists sometimes learn to better understand ancestors and haunts. Finally, any monstrous language, anything from Jotun to Necrol to Sphinx, sees occasional use. Howdy there, Lithiarch in chat. Lithiarch says, the Greek pantheon is having a moment in my local scene. Probably 3 different big campaigns just got spun up on this within the last 2 months or so. The Greek mythic topic, myth and legend theme is so omnipresent in TTRPGs. For Myth Speaker, for this one, I am mostly excited about it being the first adventure path that really has the mythic rules built in. I wasn't initially excited about the ancient Greek themes because I've seen them already so often. Like I've seen the D&D 5e Theros setting. I've played the God of War games. There's so much fiction that is set in here that it can feel like a little bit redundant. So I definitely could understand that some people have like overeaten on these topics. So I won't blame anyone who's like, sounds cool, but I've had my share of ancient Greek inspired adventures. The more I read this player's guide, the more excited I get about it. So it's totally fulfilling its purpose, I guess. Faith. Oh, I'm interested in how faith works because what we read earlier is that there's more of their own pantheon here in Iblados based on these hero gods that rise up after their prophecies and destinies being spoken about them. So let's read up how this works. Ibladans pay little attention to traditional gods, their ancestors having decided such deities weren't worthy after abandoning Iblados to weather Earthfall's own millennia ago. Totally get that. If you were abandoned by the gods, I totally understand. You're not going to worship them. Instead, most worship is directed towards hero gods, mortal demigods who oversee cults that typically fade after the hero god's death. Because myth-speaking rarely functions in the Age of Lost Omens, hero gods are a dying people. The following are many of the surviving hero gods, including their divine statistics for champions, clerics, and other PCs who choose to worship them. Note that during this adventure path, the PCs will become nascent hero gods in their own right. This needs not disrupt the PC whose spellcasting is drawn from another hero god. At the GM's discretion, such a PC might be able to fuel their own spellcasting, effectively worshipping themselves and choosing suitable domains, sanctifications, and other statistics as they draw power from the mysterious mythic source that now empowers them. As always, work with the GM to determine if this is an option, how it manifests, and how it's woven into the story for the best narrative impact. You know, fellows, I'm somewhat of my own divine source. Like, just imagine playing a cleric who is empowered by their own divinity. I'm not entirely sure how to feel about that, but I'm willing. What I do think is really cool is to give a player the chance to design their own, to pick their own domains, pick sanctifications, and maybe even come up with their own edicts and anathema. And from there, then build out like, okay, now you are basically a hero god. Are there people that start flocking towards you? I could imagine the course of this AP, wherever the party goes, they start gathering followers. They're building up their own hero god cult. So that sounds super interesting to me from a world building perspective. And that's really fascinating. Lithiarch says, religious version of the thaumaturge. You have a weakness. Why? Because I said so. Absolutely. It's like, I think that's really on point. This is the religious version of the thaumaturge. And now we have like a list of, oh wow, there's a lot of hero gods here that are currently being worshipped. A lot of names. I totally thought they would be just giving us a few, but oh my God, what's this? What is this? I gotta zoom out. Okay, this is an entire flipped page with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 hero gods that are good to go and that you can have your players choose from. Going for areas of concern from contingencies and intelligent items, tragedy and sacrifice. Chinastes is basically, oh, it's a two-facet. I want to look at Chinastes. What is Chinastes about? Sounds like a two-faced deity or something. Let's see. Chinastes, tell me your secrets. Raised as Saddlemaker, Chinastes didn't seek divinity. It found him when he took up his tack knife in defense of his homeland, using it to dispatch a warlord. After becoming a hero god, he continued to protect Rian Pharaohs from all evils. However, one of the evils, a vampire, bested him, condemning him to undeath. Even though he's a vampire, Chinastes remains a folk hero at heart, stalking the rooftops to hunt any other terrors that rule the night, and occasionally feeding on an unsuspecting citizen. His cult has split. The Night Wardens worship Chinastes as a pragmatically violent folk hero. The Redeemers mourn and revere Chinastes as a prisoner in his undead body, believing the greatest service they can perform is driving a stake through their patron's heart. The two factions clash frequently over the correct interpretation, which isn't aided by Chinastes continuing to grant spells to both. Yo, this is cool. I like that this is basically one hero god. We have two completely different interpretations. And since this hero god is still very much around, I assume, he also doesn't get involved in this, granting spells to both of them. Tragedy and sacrifice are there. Both versions have cities, death, luck, and sorrow. But, and here's the funny thing, if you follow his Redeemer interpretation, you can get the Heal Divine Font. If you go for the Night Warden, you get the Harm Divine Font. And the one can pick to Sanctify Holy, the other can Sanctify Unholy. For the rest, I think they are identical. This is cool. I wonder how this would run if you have two characters in your party. One of them follows Chinastes as the Redeemer and the other as the Night Warden. There's gotta be some very good campfire chat between those two characters. Drocalion, area of concern, is being a lion. Bro, what are you? Drocalion, what's your deal? Let's see, Drocalion. Traditionally, hero gods undergo the myth-speaking ritual and perform some great feat to obtain divinity. Not so for Drocalion, a male lion that barely seems aware of his mythic powers or the magic he grants. His worshippers consider this a feature, not a flaw. They laud and replicate Drocalion's primal strength, bravery, and rustic lifestyle. While none of them try to be eaten by their patron, the fate is one they would celebrate. They just want to be a big, chill cat. Play a catfolk cleric of Drocalion, please. We got any other? Upion and Warwick, shield bearers and promises. Share stories that glorify your companions. Guard your friends' backs. Find joy in grim circumstances. Oh, that sounds right up my alley. Upion and Warwick. When Cyclopes, is that the plural of Cyclops? Cyclopes? Huh. When Cyclopes invited Eupion to receive his myth speaking, he politely declined, unwilling to suffer the accompanying longevity if it meant outliving his lover, Warwick, by decades or even centuries. Instead, the pair continued their military careers, perishing together in the Battle of Tacicon Heights. Yet the two revived moments later with mythic power that they used to turn the tide of battle. Ever since, Eupion and Warwick have acted as a single hero god, their divine abilities fading when they're separated. The two encouraged camaraderie, steadfastness, and good cheer. Ah, that is beautiful. Wow, I love that. That's really cool that they're like, they basically got their powers together at the edge of death, and now they can share this longevity together and spread their ideas of camaraderie, steadfastness, and good cheer. Love that. This is some Achilles Patroclus shit, and I'm here for it. Happy Pride, exactly, happy Pride, people. This is definitely Achilles Patroclus levels of vibes. Really cool. Like, yeah, there's a bunch of new hero gods basically added through this. Pathfinder hardly already had any gods, but in the defense of these hero gods, I feel like these are very much local. I don't see many reasons to play a cleric or follower of one of these deities outside of Iblados, but I think there's some really cool themes in there. I think playing like a cleric of Eupion and Warwick, who spreads these ideas to glorify your companions, guard your friends back, and find joy in grim circumstances, could be really powerful. So if you see anything in here that you think is cool for your characters outside of Iblados, talk to your GM. Maybe you can use them in any of your other games. Skills and feats. Myth Speaker makes use of all the skills in Pathfinder, blah, 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 da, da. Ibladons are competitive people, delighting in harmless contests, non-lethal duels, no-holds-barred debates, and the occasional violent skirmish. Honing skills like athletics and acrobatics can provide an edge in foot races and other sports. Intimidation might give you an edge over a shaken opponent, and performance can amaze the crowd and earn admirers. Etiquette is also important. Exploration skills. Cool. Sailing lore plays a minor but recurring role, as you spend part of the adventure path plying the waves as you travel the far-flung islands and seek lost ruins. I also want to have a boat in this campaign. I think the PCs should get a boat in this campaign. They should be able to name it and upgrade it. I think it's fitting. I like boats, okay? Backgrounds. Yes, I want backgrounds. What extras do we have here? You and the other PCs begin the Myth Speaker adventure path having arrived in Balax, where you enjoy the sacred hospitality of one of the city-state's leaders. The 6 custom backgrounds created for this adventure path present various reasons your PCs might have traveled to Iblados. While you aren't required to choose one of these backgrounds, your character backstory should involve a reason to explore the region, embrace power when it's presented, and appreciate the archipelago's culture. I think this one's really important here. Embrace the mythic power when it's presented. This is something that you should highlight when you pitch this game to your players, that you will be using the mythic rules at a certain point. You won't start with them, but there will be a point in the campaign where the mythic rules are used, and that players are both, as players, on board for it, that they like the idea of not just playing your average level 2 character, but a level 2 character who can spend a resource and get plus 10 on just a skill check, but also are interested in the narrative of a character that embraces power, this mythic gift given to them, and what that means to the character. I think there's ample inspiration in ancient Greek mythology of what kind of tragedies can come forth from that, but also what kind of opportunities arise. So this is definitely one where you need to have the players both mechanically and narratively on board. Standard backgrounds. If you would rather pick a different background from other Pathfinder sources, nearly any background will work. Thematic backgrounds include artisan, emissary, gambler, merchant, sailor, and warrior. And we go to the Misspeaker backgrounds. Let me just take a sip of water before we continue with that. Don't forget to hydrate. It is pretty warm over here. I'm not sure how the temperature is wherever you might be, but over here, even with my air conditioning, it's quite a nice temperature. Beast Seeker. From jagged reefs to trackless forests to volcanoes dusted by snow even at this lower latitude, Iblados is home to fearsome creatures willing to eat civilians and snap ships in half. That's no good. There might be no greater place to test one's monster hunting credentials than this archipelago, much as countless hero gods have done over the millennia. Perhaps you traveled here to learn how to slay leviathans and better defend your homeland from such bestial threats. You might instead value the esoteric properties of the slain creatures, knowing the alchemical potential of a Hydra's eye or Medusa's venom. Choose 2 attribute boosts. One must be strength or dexterity, and one is free. You're trained in either the athletics or thievery skill, as well as the legendary beast lore skill. If you choose athletics, you gain the Titan Wrestler skill feat. If you choose thievery, you gain the Dirty Trick skill feat. Good. Child of the Polis. You're a longtime Kadarji Bay resident. Rather than explore distant lands, you've strengthened your connection to Iblados, learning its little-known secrets and making friends in every port. You know the cadence and body language needed to set strangers at ease and communicate belonging, making it easy to track down deals and leads. Who needs wealth and glory when they can revel in Iblados' eclectic culture? That said, if anything threatens the Isles, you'll be ready to rally your neighbors and fight back. Choose 2 attributes. One must be Constitutional Wisdom, other one is free. You're trained in either Diplomacy or Society skill, as well as the lore skill associated with one Ibladan city-state. Paul Balex or Paul Duraxilis is recommended. Cool. If you choose Diplomacy, you gain the Bargain Hunter skill feat. If you choose Society, you gain the Streetwise skill feat. Glory Hound. Eventually, even the greatest hero god must die, yet many live eternally through song, poetry, shrines, and art. Even though Iblados isn't producing new hero gods, its people know how to appreciate and commemorate a real hero. You hope to seize the same immortality through exceptional deeds and a little luck. If everything goes to plan, you'll retire rich and famous, looking good all the while. If the fate turns against you, at the very least, you know tales of your exploits will dazzle audiences for ages. This is a cool one. This would be the kind of background I would pick if I were to play a character in this kind of campaign. Choose 2 attributes. One must be the strength or charisma, and one is a free attribute boost. You're trained in either the intimidation or performance skill, as well as the games lore skill. Yo, I got games lore in real life. If you choose intimidation, you gain the intimidating glare skill feat. Super cool skill feat. If you choose performance, you gain the impressive performance skill feat. Katarji Epicurean. Each city-state hides enough secrets to occupy an adventurer for a lifetime. Even so, many seek the varied experiences and sights at each of Iblados' eminent cities. You have toured much of Kadarji Bay and the Ibladan archipelago, but be that as a trader, an envoy, or a tourist. Along the way, you've incorporated local idioms, idiosyncrasies, and ingredients into your cosmopolitan lifestyle. You've most recently reached Balex, ready for new adventures. So basically, you just love touring. I'm imagining for this kind of background to be maybe a little bit of someone from a wealthy background, maybe like some inheritor to some wealthy merchant who is going on one last long trip before they have to take over the family business. You choose 2 attribute boosts. One must be Constitution or Intelligence. One is free. You're trained in either the crafting or society skill and the cooking lore skill. You gain the additional lore skill feat. More lore. Good. The Obari Wanderer. For millennia, the Obari Crossing has been the lifeblood of Iblados' economy. You're no stranger to these waters, having traveled the route before and learned to feel the current's pulse. Did you begin your career far to the west in the impossible lands before sailing in search of fortune? Perhaps your first voyage involved a hold full of Vudran spices, textiles, and artwork bound for Absalon's markets or beyond. You might have even grown up in Iblados, learning to ply the Obari Ocean and guide incoming merchants past treacherous reefs. Whatever the case, you're at home, at sea, a priceless boon in this scattered archipelago. This is the background. If you want to be the ship captain, there's got to be a ship in this. If the written AP does not have a ship in it, tell your GM that you got my permission that you're getting a ship in the game. And then you pick this background as well. Okay, we cool. Choose 2 attributes boosts. One must be dexterity or wisdom, and one is a free attribute boost. You're trained in either the acrobatics or survival skill, as well as the sailing lore skill. If you choose acrobatics, you gain the catfall skill feat. If you choose survival, you gain the terrain expertise skill feat. Good stuff. And then the final bit that we do have is our student of apotheosis. From subjects of worship to forces of nature that literally reshape the region, hero gods are central to Ibledan identity. While every child learns at least a little about their city-states divinities from the past and present, you have devoured these legends. Nerd. Do you long to have witnessed their miracles firsthand? Have you studied this topic as an academic, archivist, or priest? Perhaps you just love a good story. Whatever the case, these legends speak to you on an ineffable level. Are the fates hinting at some secret destiny? Perhaps you're becoming a hero god of old? Choose 2 attribute boosts. One must be intelligence or charisma, and one is free. You're trained in either the occultism or religion skill, as well as the hero god lore skill. Which, considering if during this AP you become a hero god, that hero god lore skill refers to yourself. Like, you can roll hero god lore to ask your GM what you know about yourself. Have some true introspection in this game. Good game, Pathfinder. You gain the My Legend Must Be Told action. Replace this with the Mythic Echo action when you gain a Mythic Calling. So you get this one only once you get your Mythic Calling. The Legend Must Be Told is a free action frequency once per day, and the trigger is your dying value would reach an amount sufficient to kill you, typically 4. You instead stabilize and increase your doomed value by 1. Okay, this is cool. And then you also have the Mythic Echo. Replace it with the, so now I get it. You get the My Legend Must Be Told, you get that before you have your Mythic Calling, and when you get your Mythic Calling, it gets replaced by Mythic Echo, which is a reaction which you can use once per game session. The trigger being you would fail or critically fail an attack, check, or saving throw to which you apply Mythic Proficiency. You regain 1 Mythic point. Okay, so basically when you fail it, you can use this once per game session to get the Mythic point that you spent to get that Mythic Proficiency to gain it back. Just reading this sounds really useful and really powerful. And though the other backgrounds look really flavorful, this one has a direct mechanical tie-in with Mythic rules. So this race is pretty big to me, but I've always been more on the narrative and flavor side of Pathfinder. I couldn't tell you if this is mechanically really big, especially because I haven't played with the Mythic rules yet, but it sounds really powerful for a background. And that's the backgrounds and all our stuff in here. Let's just look at the art again. Oh, wait, there was one art that I want to call out. If I'm not mistaken, this right here, this is Mios, our non-binary thaumaturge iconic, all dripped out in the finest Ibledan gear. I think Mios looks great. They look amazing. And I'm glad they found a new outfit. Just wanted to share this. This is really important, people. If there's any takeaway you want from this player's guide, it's that Mios looks great. So I guess that's it. That's the player's guide for Myth Speaker, the mythic adventure path that is coming soon with its first book. You should definitely keep an eye on the Paizo store for that if you're interested in it. I'm really curious about it, and I hope if you've watched this, if you watched this live or you're watching this back later, you had a good time flipping through the pages with me. Let me know in the comments below what you think of the Myth Speaker Adventure Path, if you're planning to run it, planning to play it, and what kind of characters you want to run in it. I'm excited to hear about it. I, for one, probably will put this closer to my list, to like my top favorites of what I would like to run. Mostly to have a chance to use the Mythic rules. I want to see how that plays out. I like powerful characters. Mythic rules feels like a chance of having just a little bit of Exalted in my Pathfinder. That's a good thing to me. Once again, thanks for watching and hanging out. If you're here and you're not yet a subscriber to the channel and you liked this, please feel free to subscribe to the channel. Share it with your friends, family, your dogs, your arch nemesis, with random people you meet on the street. Just tell them to subscribe here and learn more about TTRPGs and Pathfinder. Thank you very much for being here. I'm gonna go out, get some more to drink, and cool down a little. So thanks again. Take care. Stay safe, and bye-bye.